So now I'm just going to move to some different kind of headlines. Recently, we had a case of a footballer who had his pet cat taken away and he was fined a lot of money for kicking his cat, and was really universally condemned by everyone, and people saying he shouldn't play anymore because he was being cruel to this cat. And about 10 years ago, a woman put a cat in a bin. I don't know if you remember that story, and also faced really universal vilification. So these stories really show that as a society, we really do not endorse cruelty to animals. But at the same time, most people eat meat, and a lot of the meat is produced in intensive farms like this. So in the US, about 99% of meat is produced in intensive farms. And we know these are very cruel, and animals suffer greatly. And pigs are at least as, if not more, intelligent than dogs. And would we want to see dogs cooped up like this? People kind of justify it, and in their minds they think of farm animals as not being as cute or lovable, having as many feelings perhaps as pets. But of course, anyone who's cuddled a micro pigs, that's my daughter at Pennywell Farm, pigs can definitely be just as cute as dogs. So this results in what we call the meat paradox. So a lot of people feel a bit uncomfortable with killing animals and with the way meat is produced, animal products are produced. So for example, in the US, you can see that the majority of people have some discomfort, feel uneasy about it, and even nearly half actually say they would support a ban on slaughterhouses, but less than 10% are vegetarians. So, and this has been replicated in lots of other countries, including places like China and Brazil, these kind of results. So really, there's this big conflict here between people's beliefs and values and their thoughts that it's wrong to harm animals, and their behavior. And that leads to something that psychologists call cognitive dissonance. And that's this kind of uncomfortable feeling we have when our beliefs and our behaviors are in opposition and not consistent. And we respond to this in a number of ways. We either avoid any sort of sign or mention or discussion of this dissonance. So we just carry on with our behavior and don't think about it, basically, which is why it can be very hard to get through to people when we're trying to change things like diets, the food choice on campus. A more common one really is to sort of try to rationalize or come up with defensive beliefs and reactions, because you want to sort of believe that you're a good person and you want to justify your behavior. So you might say, the farming is very humane, the animals don't suffer, I need to eat meat, everyone eats meat, I need to eat it for my health, whatever. And of course, the most effective way is really to just change. If you've really got these deeply held beliefs, to be true to yourself, you can just change your behavior. And that's obviously the most effective way to resolve this conflict. So just to give you an example of what the research shows the rationalizations are, it's often called like the 3 N's or the 4 N's of meat consumption. These are people's beliefs that they state. So that it's necessary to eat meat, and we know this isn't true. So dietitians have done analysis. It's not necessary, but this is a deeply held belief that it's normal and natural for humans to eat meat as omnivores. And people talk about the paleo diet, and we've always eaten meat, and it's nice. So that's actually one of the main reasons why people don't want to give it up, is because they just like it. And what you can see, perhaps not surprisingly, is people that don't eat meat over here, the vegetarians and vegans, they don't endorse these reasons. So this is on a scale of 1 for completely disagree to 7 completely agree. So they're really not agreeing at all that meat is necessary, normal, or nice. To some extent, they agree a little bit more that it's natural because we are omnivores. So these kind of defensive reasons people come up with for eating meat can translate into the barriers as well that prevent them from reducing. So before people embark on a change attempt, they say that the barriers are going to be taste, cost, and health, because they think they're not going to get enough protein and their health's going to suffer. If you study people that are actually trying to reduce their meat intake and you look at what has happened to kind of get in their way, these are the most common reasons that people report. So other people are a really important barrier, particularly housemates or partners, and who lead to a need to make, 2 meals, or if you're the person who's preparing a lot of the food in your house and your partner doesn't want to eat a vegetarian meal, then that's a big barrier. Time and convenience, because meat is so normative in our society and it's available everywhere. Sometimes it's hard to find meat-free options that you like. Lots of people have got meat in the house, so when they embark on a change attempt, they don't want to waste those animal products, so they want to eat them. Eating out of habit, always ordering the same thing or making yourself the same breakfast or lunch or whatever. And of course, giving into temptation. So when you're in that situation, and lots of people talk about smelling bacon and relapsing if they're vegetarian and that kind of thing. So these barriers have led to research on what the facilitators are. What do we know about successful attempts to reduce meat? So planning is really key. So making sure you've used up everything in the house and you get in lots of delicious alternatives so you're not as tempted. Really reminding yourself frequently of your goals. So rather than behaving out of habit, you're behaving in line with your goals to create new habits. Plan ahead. So think about what you're doing that week. If you're going to someone's house for dinner or going to a barbecue or whatever it is, have a plan, have some substitutes, have something ready to say to people, so that when that situation arises, you know exactly how you're going to behave. And then we've learned a bit about the joy you can discover by experimenting with recipes and plants. But some people find it a bit easier when they're making the transition to just go with the normal meals that they would cook, but just using meat substitutes. And that's also fine, I think, whatever it takes. I think we just need to encourage as many people as possible to reduce their meat and ideally dairy intake. And however we get there, I think is fine. Even if not everyone can subscribe to the ideal of kind of local, organic, fresh food, but obviously we hope that people will get there as well. And then opening yourself up to these messages. So we learned that avoidance is very common in people that are experiencing this dissonance. So they might not be wanting to watch certain documentaries, but if you do manage to reduce your meat, you might then be more open to engaging with this. Finding like-minded people to provide support is really important. So other people are one of the main barriers, but they can also be a really good facilitator. Using planning tools, there are some online. We've got an app as well that people can use to try and train themselves to avoid meat, which is a bit of a fun way to do it. And try and reward yourself for every behavior change. So every time you have a meal that's meat-free, and you're not eating processed meat, for example, you're really helping animals, the planet, and your own health. So just really feeling that positive reinforcement every time you make a good choice like that. And other research, so just finally, before I finish, what we found, this is research done by Lisa Becker, one of my PhD students. We've been looking at disgust and how people respond emotionally to foods. And lots of people that avoid meat say that actually meat disgusts them and they couldn't possibly eat it even if they were offered it, because it's just not tempting to them anymore. The idea of eating it is disgusting to them. Some people who eat meat do also report this, particularly for some types of meat. And of course, everybody can report this for meats that are unfamiliar to them. And we know that feeling disgusted by meat is associated with less intake, both over time, if people are kind of being measured repeatedly, or cross-sectionally, we see that association. So we think that if you manage to stop eating meat for a while, then your normal defenses might be down. You might be more open to the education and the messages around it. And you might also kind of allow this feeling of disgust to grow, which would be very helpful if you wanted to avoid it longer term. So you can change how you see foods, basically. And that feeling of disgust often is associated with ethical motivations for avoiding meat, so animal welfare reasons. And we know that that is related to longer term, more sustained success in meat avoidance compared to, say, a health motivation, which is important. But obviously, if you're doing it for your own health only, you can still have a bit, and that's not as bad. And so, yeah, I've just got some links there. I can share the slides if people are interested, mostly taken from the British Dietitians Association. with some kind of good facts about the nutritional side of meat-free diets.